do we want to go around and say we recommend the book?
I had two other things I kind of wanted to bring up about the book.
Okay. Too bad.
Really quick.
Okay.
The suicide talk, like, we do, like, okay, first of all of his information was old. Like, he didn't have anything from, I don't even know, 2016. Like, I don't even know if he had anything from the, like, 2000, like, it was all 60s, 70s, 80s, like, data. And we do know that stopping suicide stops suicide. We know that now. Like, there's a bunch of training out there that's the whole training. The whole purpose of the training is like training people to be comfortable to say to someone, are you thinking about suicide? Because it's taboo, right? You're like, oh, they're so depressed, whatever. But nobody ever says, like, are you thinking about killing yourself? Right? Like, straight out in the face. Like, it's like we've been conditioned to not say that, but we, like, that is known now. So I felt like for a book that's published, I think in 2019 or sometime.
Yep, 2019. Just looked it up.
So that was just one thing that I was like reading it and I'm like, that's not actually right. Like, this, I don't know.
So if you think someone's struggling, thinking about killing themselves, just say, or if they're depressed, say, are you thinking about killing yourself?
Any like changes in behavior, right?
Yeah.
That seem like you're concerned. That's it. Yeah. Because that's the whole training is based on that now, is knowing that just interrupting the progression of I'm going to kill myself is effective in saving like a ton of lives.
Okay.
I didn't know
But
that.
do you think,
It's good to
but
know.
do you also think that his point of making it more difficult for people to kill themselves?
Yeah, I don't think he was saying, I don't even
Yeah, I
think that
think
was his point.
he was saying that people being successful in killing themselves was
That is what his point. Any interruption was
coupled with making it easy for them to execute it,
Easy
rather
access.
than making it a difficult thing to execute, that they're less likely to kill themselves if it's more difficult. That's why people like in the States, they have handguns, so it's easier to kill yourself. Whereas like poisoning
No, I know
yourself,
he started off by saying like
or the
people
gas.
thought if people want to die, they're just going to kill themselves anyway. Right? Like he started, like that was the mistaken belief a long time ago. And then the gas got changed and so many people didn't kill themselves. And they're like, oh, I guess, you know what I mean? Like take away the method and they're not going to do it. Right? Like, and the old mistaken belief was it doesn't matter what the method is. If someone wants to die, they're going to find out a way to do it. Right? That's not true. He did say that that's not true. Like that's all fine and good, but like, it's all old information. Like it's old. Like people do know that now. Like he also made a statement being like, this is what people think. And it's like, no, they don't anymore. Because everything you're talking about is from the 60s.
I think a lot of people do think that though. I think a lot of people do think that because they figured that out.
I know, but I'm just saying like in science, like a lot of people don't think
science.
COVID exists, but COVID exists, right? So a lot of people don't think this about suicide, but we all know now that it's true because there's been research and studies about it.
But the book isn't necessarily for scientists, right? He's doing it for the greater population. And I think a lot of people do think, well, if you're going to kill yourself, you just figure out a way. Like that's still a common belief, I think, amongst many people.
I think I thought that until I read this. I don't know what I thought, actually, because it didn't occur to me to think about that. But I think if you asked me, I would have been like, I don't know.
And some people are. Like I also feel
it.
like the person that he was talking about was all obsessed with it anyways, and she did end up killing herself.
What, Virginia?
But she put her head in the gas stove anyways.
Sylvia Plath.
But I think she would have anyway, because she was like obsessed about it. Like that was part of her almost shtick.
I did find it interesting that poets have an unusually high suicide rate. I was like,
I don't find that, like I find that, I think it's interesting, but it makes sense to me, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
like creative souls.
So I learned that, and then literally like right after that, I had a client get a poetry related tattoo, and I was like, oh, should I tell her? Because she writes poetry, and I was like,
are you a poet?
Did you? Did you tell her?
Should I tell her?
No, I kill yourself.
I didn't, but maybe I should check it out.
But what Kim's saying, if you do say something, she would be less likely to, right? If you mention it.
Hey, well, now I have to really cross an intimacy boundary here, guys.
That's the problem.
It just
right
better.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know her at all. And now I'm jumping to a conclusion that she's suicidal.
Just because she's a poet. Okay, let's not.
Yeah.
That's the default thing to a stereotype when you don't know anything about the stranger.
I think I'm gonna.
That's true. You don't. And
You're
you don't
relying
know.
on the stereotype. And that makes society work and not work at the same time.
Yeah, I think I'll sleep on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Book interrupted.
We should do a whole series on hair because we have the mullet and then the bedhead. So this interruption is brought to you by hair that desperately needs to be washed.
On Book Interrupted.
Okay, what's the second thing, Kim?
I felt like the chapter, the entire chapter for Sandra Bland was a little bit like the chapter for Brock Turner, where missing a bunch of important information. Like the fact that they figure out where the most crime happens, like that's based on like faulty statistics. Like it's based on reported crimes and like it's police stat. Like the information that they base that on is gathered by like police. So what it reflects really is where the police action is, not where the crime is. So if you're profiling, right, you're going to go to that place where you know all the bad people live or whatever, and then when you report all the crimes that you processed there, it's going to look like that's where the crime is concentrated, but maybe that's where your attention is concentrated, right? Like that's an important variable to highlight in crime statistics, like that they're not representative of what people think that they actually represent. And the read technique too, that whole like plan for like cops pulling people over and then like observing to see if they're like telling the truth or not. The read technique is flawed. People use that in interrogation.
But didn't he say that
makes
though?
a bunch.
He
Yes.
did say it was.
Yeah,
Yes.
he does say that.
No, I'm not saying he didn't say that, but I'm saying the fact that the whole like I'm just like criticizing the police department now using a technique that produces false confessions and then using it in traffic stops. It's even less appropriate. And then like if you think like you're looking for someone to be guilty, like it's like confirmation bias, right? Like, oh, these people are going to show me something, I just have to question them long enough. Oh, there it is, they're getting annoyed. And it's like, no, maybe they're annoyed because you're racist and they have to deal with this every fucking time someone pulls them over or whatever. Like
the guy, he was saying the guy had played basketball in his car just to relax for a second. And then, then the cop gave him all these tickets. He lost his car. He couldn't afford. They ended up putting him in jail because he couldn't afford a ticket, all because he took a rest at a basketball court in his car.
So I don't think that Malcolm Gladwell was wrong. I guess what my problem was is he didn't give enough attention to that reality or something.
But I mean, I got maybe it was just me, but I got the impression that he was saying this happened because of race. Like,
yeah.
Are you saying that you didn't think he was saying this was race related? I thought he was saying this is race related, and here's all the reasons how that plays out. This is how the race.
You wanted a deeper dive on some of these topics.
I thought that he was like, I thought that the fact that race might have been race related. Like, I don't even think he was saying that for sure. I think it was like a side note that he said, which is where I maybe was like, okay, now he's going to finally go there. I thought there was going to be like this great ending where it was all like, oh, he did it again. Like he showed us in his backwards way and like questioned all the things that we thought and still showed us whatever. And I feel like he just didn't do that.
I got it like very much the race thing for me. I don't know from what I read, but I agree. It can't be that like, I think he's on all the topics. He's just touching on a little bit of each topic, right? Like he's talking about a little bit of alcohol effects, a little bit of race, a little bit of, I don't know, all sorts of
toxic
stuff. Like
masculinity. And
like he doesn't go into detail about anything really.
I know, but I feel like he was saying like, because the officer assumed that so-and-so was transparent, that's not what the officer was doing. Right? The officer wasn't, you know what I mean? It's not supporting this is not a good example of transparency and how this officer assumed that this irritated person he was pulling over is now a problem. He doesn't include the massive veil that race and power relations and all of that stuff impacts that in exchange, right? He just says it's about transparency. And I feel like that relieves the officer of responsibility, right? Like, oh, he was just being a human and assuming transparency like we all tend to do, right? Like that's what when I was reading it, that's where I feel like it was missing, because he's trying to support these things that aren't about race, right? And then by doing so, I don't think he does justice to the impact that race and or gender, depending on which chapter we're talking about, have on those things. Like, I liked the book, like I'll recommend it when we get to saying that or whatever, but those things, like, that was missing for me, and it felt wrong for it to be so absent. It felt like whitewashed or something, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't cross his mind to be like, maybe just 3 sentences to be like, don't get me wrong, race is major, but in the interest of my argument about transparency, I'm going to use this example and not really include how much race and the history of racism has to do with this interaction or whatever. Like, that's how I felt.
He did say that, like, when we meet a stranger, we rely on stereotypes for better or for worse. And like, for me, when I was reading that, I was thinking, for me, I thought it was like clear that he was talking about like, this happened because of, you know, racism, right? And here's all the other, this is how it plays out in this way. So somebody would be like, well, I wasn't being racist, but I know that this person is going to act like this because of this or whatever. And my past experience, where this would have been something playing out over and over. Anyway.
One of the things it was just one of the starred notes of this research. And it was actually made, I think it was in Ireland. Yeah, Northern Ireland. They said that they surveyed all the police officers to say where at the highest crime areas in where they work. And 97% of the police officers did not get where the highest percent of crime is. 97%. So the crimes that are actually happening in their territory was not where they thought was the worst place, where they need to be focusing their energy. So, right. So I think he's trying to prove that the police don't actually know, like, it needs to be based on actual, you know what I mean? Like, someone actually got shot there, or someone actually, you know what I mean? So they're saying that police officers don't know.
Yeah, my only point is, like, you'll see it where you look for it, right? So if you are going on stereotypes and you think that this impoverished neighborhood is where more crime is going to be, you're going to find it there. But if you don't go and check that college neighborhood where all the white kids are doing coke in their dorms, you're not going to catch them. And then there's going to be, 80% Black people in jail. And you know what I mean? Like, that's how the overrepresentation happens, right?
Yes, but at the same time, he's also saying, even in that spectrum of them being like, this is where the bad neighborhood is, that neighborhood isn't even bad.
I know, I get what you're saying.
Targeting.
I know.
Like a vast amount of
lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge on the yeah.
Yes,
I mean, it's just
and it was so crazy to see how it unfolded too. Like, from the very beginning, and then like, we're all going to do it this way. And I also think it's important to note that it was misapplied.
Yeah,
right?
And then
like, what if you do it in this one location, it's super good, and then like, we're just going to do it everywhere. And then that's how you get to profiling.
Everywhere. Wherever we feel like going, we're going to do it everywhere. Needle in a haystack, everybody's criminal.
Yeah, that's annoying.
Right.
It's annoying when you like learn something and then like misapply it, so it's almost like you unlearned it, but you think that you've learned it. So you're like, but I know. Yeah. Now you just think you know, and you don't.
Just roll this
you
out.
You know less. Yeah.
No, we have to
recommendations.
recommend.
I don't want to go
recommend.
first.
Everyone needs to go around. So do you recommend the book?
I recommend the book. I think it was really good. I thought it was very interesting. It held my attention. I just would like to flag the things I already flagged for any reader, and that is all.
I recommend the book. I thought it was really great. I learned a ton of things. It kept my attention. I do feel like with Kim, there's some lacking things, and some of the chapters don't quite fit into the overall thesis of it. But it was entertaining, and I actually am really, you guys all said about his other books, so I'm excited to read some of Malcolm Gladwell's other books.
They're better than this one, I feel like. Yeah. Like, I almost felt like he was like, he's got this shtick, right? He did it once, and then he did it again, and then he did it again. So now it's like he has to do it again. It almost, like, I wondered if there was like some pressure to like do the same, because it was magical the first couple times, right? It was really cool.
I feel like we should have a definition for a recommendation, like, because it seems like lots of times people are like, when we do this part, it's like, we're two options, recommend or don't recommend, but there should be a middle one that's like recommend with disclaimer.
That's where I am. I'm an RWD.
I like it.
RWD. Wow.
RWD. I think we just
Okay.
invented it because there's like along the way, there's been a lot of books that it's like, I would recommend to this person, but not to that person.
Right.
I would recommend it. I can't speak to the paper copy because I honestly maybe got like 5 pages in and then started listening to it. And I was like, whoa, this is good. It's borderline addictive to listen to. He is such a good podcaster and clearly a good writer. And it was kept my attention and was very thought provoking. And no disclaimer, I would recommend it. At least the audio version.
I'd recommend the book. I liked it. It was is interesting and thought provoking, and I don't know. I think I read it pretty quickly. That's it. It was good. It's Malcolm Gladwell. How can you go wrong?
It's interesting. Your definition of being good is that you read it quickly.
I thought that too. I was like, okay.
It totally is.
Fast read.
Yeah, it's like because you need to get more information.
I have to get more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
She's
there are
busy.
books that I have read slowly, but for different reasons. Like some books you just have to like sit in and like enjoy slowly. I don't know. But when it's a book like this, especially if it's like a nonfiction that's like this, I don't know. If I'm engaged and I want to know more, then I'll read it really quickly and I will forego sleep because I'll just stay up and like be like, just one more chapter.
Good.
Yeah, so it's usually a pretty good gauge.
So I recommend the book. I love Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah, I love his books. I love the formula he does, like I was saying in my book report that I recommend the book and then I try to tell people about the book and it's like you just pick little stories that he does and you don't do them justice and they're like, what is it about? And you're like, well,
what is it about?
Like,
read it.
Everyone doesn't, we default to truth and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's like, and then you're like, just read the book. So I feel like that with every Malcolm Gladwell book that I've ever recommended to anyone. I'm always like, there's a story here about hockey players, or there's a story about like if you're married or something, like, and you do something when you're newlywed, and it's never really very clear. But anyway, I really like the book. I like how he always makes me think something completely different than I ever thought of, something that I think is just a normal thing. So I like it. And I don't have disclaimers of the book either. I would recommend it to, I think, most people. I really liked it. And it was, for me too, a quick read. Like you just want to read the next chapter to see what else he's going to say that proves his case, right? So
What would you say is your favorite Malcolm Gladwell book? So that my next one, when I pick one up, what's the best one?
Blink for me.
Yeah.
I have that. Someone lent that to me, so I'm going to read it soon.
Yeah, Blink is my favorite. Tipping Point was my first book, and it was amazing.
I really like Tipping Point too.
A lot of people in business were reading Tipping Point. Like it was going around the business world. Everyone was like, have you read this book? So that's how I got into Malcolm Gladwell, because like in business world, everyone was giving the Tipping Point book. But then I got hooked on just the way he writes. And yeah, I haven't read, has anyone read
the dog
David
one.
and Goliath?
No, I
David
have
Goliath's
it, but I
supposed to
haven't
be
read
good.
it yet.
And there's one dog. It's got dog in the title.
Oh, right. I haven't read that one either.
Like what the dog saw, or who? When the robin saw the dog. The dog.
What did the robin tell the dog?
What did that robin tell that dog?
I wonder if it's in here. Hold on. Let me see if it says what other books he's written.
I'm sure it's in here. Oh yeah, what the dog saw.
What the robin knows, what the dog saw.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Never forget, every child matters.